back, guys. Today we're going to be talking about this magnifier right here. So this is made by KTactical, and they did send this out to me, just full disclosure, but that doesn't affect how I do reviews. I just tell you what I've discovered through using something. So they also sent me a bunch of stuff up here. So personally, I'm not into all this kind of like cosplay type, stuff, but if you like this kind of stuff, they have patches, they have those little charms. If you've seen, like if you play Call of Duty, all the little charms you can hang on the side of your gun, they make stuff like that. And they actually make an attachment, which is kind of clever in my opinion, to attach those charms to. It's just a tiny little clamp that clamps onto your Picatinny rail, wherever you want. Has a little loop where you can hook that on there. But something that this would also be useful for is for sling retention, something where you can attach your sling to through the loop, or you could use it for wire management for different types of NVGs or laser setups or whatever you wanted. You could use it for just a bunch of different things if you want to just hook something on there. So I thought this would actually be useful for other things other than just their little charms. But that's what it's intended for. But if you thought of some sort of use for this, you might be able to use it. It's really, really cheap. I don't remember how much it is. I'll annotate it here if I remember. But I thought that was kind of neat. So I thought I would tell you about that specifically. And again, they sent me out some more patches. They also sent me this knife. So quick review: if you want a cheap knife that works really well, go ahead and buy this thing. I've been carrying it for about a month, almost 2 months now. Used it for all kinds of stuff that you probably shouldn't use knives for, which is why it's all kinds of dirty right now. But this thing sent to me was the sharpest knife I've ever bought that was less than $75. Whenever I got it, I had to tighten this screw a little bit because it was a little bit too loose for my liking, so I tightened it so it opened up a little bit, I guess less easy. It was harder to open up because it opened up really easy, and I'm used to things that have a little bit more friction. But they sent this to me, and right out of the box, I could take this thing and just slice a sheet of paper like it was butter. This thing was ridiculously sharp, so kudos to them. And I think this thing's less than 20 bucks. So if you're looking for a sub $20 knife, or you're that guy that goes to Walmart and buys a cheap knife because you're going to lose them all the time, this would be a really good option. So it does come with a box. You can see it's, I would say, on par with Hollow Sun style boxes. It's about the same. I don't use boxes, so whatever. You can see their coloration for their stuff all on their website. They like red and black. So if you really like that kind of, Deadpool look to your rifle, I know a lot of guys like this red anodized coloration. They'll build out ARs. I'll insert a picture of what I'm talking about. They'll have all the little accents as red. You're going to absolutely love this thing. For me, I don't need it, don't care for it necessarily, but I end up spray painting pretty much everything. So at some point, this whole thing's going to get spray painted once I figure out which rifle I want to keep it on permanently. And I do want to keep it on a rifle. So what really appealed to me when I was looking at this online and I saw it on their website is this is almost a direct copy to Vortex's micro red dot, or not red dot, but micro magnifier, down to the QD lever and everything else. It's very, very, very similar, almost identical. Especially when it comes to like the size of how big this thing is. So you can see how short this is compared to a normal magnifier, which usually would come out to about right here. So if you're looking to save rail space or kind of get things out of the way, this is a really good option. But the price point on this thing is just incredible. So when I looked on the website, and again, they sent it out to me. Again, doesn't change anything that I say. But this thing was $125, $135, somewhere in that range. I don't remember exactly. But for a magnifier in that price range, for something this small, I haven't seen anything that compares to it. Sig makes a micro red dot that's around $175, $180. That's similar to this in size and everything, but it doesn't have a QD mount. It has one of those like stupid nuts that tightens down. And then I believe their QD system, or their rock to the side on the Sig, is not just a push over. I think it has like a button you have to push, which I don't like. It's similar to the Vortex ones. I don't like those either. I like just being able to throw the thing to the side, call it a day, move it back over. That's why I like the Hollow Sun on my other rifle. But that aside, the Vortex, from what I remember, again, the Sig one was $175, I think. The Vortex, if you're going to buy one of those, they're $300. And again, this is almost a direct copy because the Vortex does have the QD mount as well. It's almost the exact same. Let's talk about the specs of this thing. So as you can see on here, it does have a QD release, which is really easy to use. So you can see on here how it locks. So whenever you pull out, again, this wouldn't be moving if it's on the rail because this wouldn't be moving. But you can see it has a pretty solid lockup. In order to release it, you have to push in on this, then that releases it. So again, you can see how it locks into that recess right there. So you push in that recess, and then it'll open it back up. I really like QD abilities for stuff like this, because if it breaks, you know, you shatter the lens or you get a whole bunch of mud or something inside this thing, you can take it off really quick and not, you know, and you can still aim with your firearm. So I like QD mounts. I don't like ones that are not removable. One like this, which is basically what the Sig comes with, except it's more of a nut shape, and you would actually need a wrench to get that thing off. But this one, at least you can turn, you know, with your finger and get off. But I prefer stuff like this, like the Hollow Sun has, like the Vortex has, and this is on par with those. Now, whenever I saw the price point of this thing, you know, $130-ish, I was skeptical. So now when they sent this to me, they did say that they wanted me to just really, really test this thing, and I'm more than okay with that. And because I was a little bit skeptical of how well it was going to hold anyways, because again, at the price point, I wasn't expecting a whole lot, to be completely honest. I was expecting it to either lose zero or have some sort of issues, because most magnifiers or optics around $100 usually have some shortcoming, because, you know, you have to in order to make them at that price point. And the first thing that I noticed that I wasn't necessarily a huge fan of, and is something that I would like for them to fix, is on the turrets on here. They're very similar to, if you are familiar with Bushnell's turrets, that's almost exactly identical. But on here, whenever you turn them either direction, it's just a screw. There's no detent, so there's no clicking, and there's no detent to hold them in place, so it's just friction. And I thought that was going to be an issue at first, because usually whenever you have something like that, recoil will generally cause it to lose zero, which technically magnifiers don't hold zero. You just adjust them to where your dot is centered in the magnifier. But even if you didn't, the optic is still zeroed. So that's not really an issue. It's just kind of a, no one likes seeing their reticle up here in the corner instead of centered right here. But I thought that was going to be a problem. And so I really wanted to test this thing out and make sure it could hold up to recoil. And they actually asked me, hey, do you have like a 308 or a larger gun that you can test recoil? Because we really want to make sure this thing holds zero. I was like, sure, I have a Mosin Nagant. That thing breaks everything, so I'll strap it on that bad boy. So I had it on my AR-15 for probably around 100 rounds, and I switched out between a 16-inch barreled AR and then an AR pistol with an 11-inch barrel, if that matters to you. Shot about 100 rounds of 223 or 5.56 through it. And again, this is, you know, ammo's hard to find right now. I'm not going to throw 1,000 rounds through every caliber through this thing, just testing this. Sorry, if you want to do it, go for it. I also shot, you know, 100 rounds or so through my AK, and I didn't record a lot of this footage because at the time I was just getting some training practice in with some buddies at the range. Didn't think to record it, but just know I have been testing this thing for a good solid month and a half. And I go to the range just about every week. So 100 rounds to the ARs, 100 rounds to the AKs, and then I was like, okay. I was checking the zero the entire time, and at first I thought it did lose zero, and I was like, oh, well, there it goes. And it was on my ARs at the time. Actually, no, that's not true. It was on my AK. But these two little screws right here are actually what loosened. The zero, if you want to call it zero, again, the focus of where it puts the dot, it did not lose zero. It was actually these two bolts right here, or screws, whatever you want to call them, that is for like the riser that it also comes with. So if you want to lower 1/3 co-witness, you know, sight to go with this, you would need to put the spacer in there, and it comes with screws. I don't know if they weren't tightened from the factory, or if they just came loose under recoil, and maybe they just need some Loctite. But they actually came loose, and that's why it looked like it was losing zero when it wasn't. Once I tightened it back up, it was fine, never had a problem. They haven't come loose since, so they may have just been loose from the factory. That said, you should always use Loctite on all of your screws. So whenever you get this, if you buy one, go ahead and once you figure out what height mount you want, take out the screws, put some Loctite on them, screw it back down. Then you won't have a problem after that. So when I found out that was the issue, I was like, oh, okay, so I tightened those back down, put it back on my rifle, and boom, it was right back to perfectly centered again. So I was like, okay, so it wasn't actually the turrets losing zero. Now, speaking of the turrets, so one thing I will say is the turrets have quite a bit of adjustment. I want to say it's somewhere around like 45 MOA worth, somewhere in that range. Now, I will say that the up and down, whenever I adjusted it, it was fairly close to where I wanted it. But the right to left, the windage, really had to be cranked pretty much all the way one direction to where it started getting a little tight. And so that's another thing I would like to see change to where, I don't know, maybe that was just my specific model. Maybe with my gun, with my receiver, with my red dot, everything, it had to move all that way over. But anyways, it did zero it just fine. There still is more adjustment if necessary. It just started getting to where it was near the end.
7.62 by 54R. See how big that is?
Pretty good sized round. It's somewhere between a 308 and a 30-06. Alright, so now it's on a Mosin Nagant. And again, I'm not actually aiming with this thing. I'm using the iron sights. But I just want to see if I can break this with recoil from this bad boy here. Alright, so again, 5 more rounds, and again, every cheap scope I've tried using with this thing has broken. So, and usually it breaks within the first 5 to 10 rounds, and you can tell it's not going to hold zero. This thing, so far, holding up great. In case you're wondering why this Mosin bolt is actually really smooth, it's because I've shot it a lot. Holy Cosmoline has pretty much melted out at this point. Alright, let's see how it's doing. Now I'll insert some footage here, but I should also mention that in between all my shooting, I was trying to break this thing. I was just putting it on my rifle and I was just slapping it back and forth, locking it and unlocking it in this position, back and forth. And I did that between every drill that we did. I was just smacking the snot out of this thing because I was really, really expecting it to lose zero at some point because it didn't have the detents, but it doesn't. But it doesn't. Oh. So, however, despite my best efforts, I was unable to get this thing to lose zero, and I smacked it around a lot. I was not gentle with this thing. I even put it in the back of my truck on a long trip, where we went over lots of bumps and everything, and it didn't, even being jostled around, jumped around like that, didn't cause it to lose zero, which that specific drive around in my vehicle did cause my UTG that does have little locking, they're not detents, but kind of right here, they have like a little hole with a little set screw that you can screw in, and it provides tension on whatever mechanisms in there to help it keep from turning. But the UTG, even with that, still lost zero after a while of abuse, and which is not a big deal. You know, readjust it back to zero, it's not a big deal. So even if, and again, this is just a sample of one, they only sent me one, but I'm very, 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 very impressed with this thing, especially for the price. Like, in my opinion, again, just my opinion, and if you haven't bought one of these already and you're looking for a small micro magnifier, don't even waste your time with the Vortex. I understand Vortex, you know, bigger name company. They have, you know, better warranty, quote unquote, or unconditional or whatever. But for the price, if you don't want to spend, or if you want to spend less than $200 on something, this is the way to go. If you're looking for a tiny little magnifier like this. If you're looking for a full-size magnifier, I still like the Holosun a little bit better. Because of where it's mounted, you don't have to rearrange your rear sight. If you want to, you know, if you have long gorilla arms, you can still get a longer or farther back cheek weld and still be able to see through it. But again, that's just because this body is so short. Like, that's the name of the game. So something else I really like, and again, I'll put this on the rifle so you can see. Mounts super easy, super snug, and on the other side, you adjust. Whenever it's loose, you just tighten this, you know, a couple clicks either direction. And it actually does have a detent. You can see a little shiny button right there. There is a little detent to hold it in place. You adjust it to where you want, put it back on, tighten it. If it's not tight or if it's too loose or whatever, then you turn another couple clicks, tighten it again, until you get it to fit on your pick rail, because every pick rail is slightly different. The mount on here with just the flip to the side is very, very positive. So I'm a stickler when it comes to how durable and how solid I want things to be, and I don't like a loosey-goosey magnifier to flip to the side. And that was one of the things I was worried about with the Holosun review, or with that product, specifically with their magnifiers. Everyone talked about how easy it was to move from side to side. And it was kind of easy, but it wasn't super easy. So it felt fine for what it was. This one, it seems, in my opinion, more solid, as in it takes a little bit more effort to push it over, and it feels like it's more solid whenever it locks. Like I can bump it and it stays where it's at. So I actually like the tension on this one better than my Holosun. So something else I'll mention too is the weight of this. It weighs maybe a little bit less than the Holosun. I'm not exactly sure how much it weighs, you know, ounces and everything. Maybe I'll put that in here if I feel like researching it. If not, you can research all the specific specs of all the different ones. I'm not going to look them all up for you. Sorry, you have Google. But I really, really, really like this thing, and it doesn't feel cheap. Whenever you're holding it in your hand, it's got a good heft to it, but it's not like overly heavy. But it seems very, very well built. And again, I'm not gentle with stuff. I'm usually pretty rough on things whenever it comes to optics. And again, with this thing strapped to a rifle, you expect it to get, you know, thrown on the bench at the range. You expect to get dropped on the ground at some point. It's going to go thrown in the back of your truck. You know, you're not going to be gentle with this stuff. It's going to be bumping around, hitting your equipment. Going through all this thing handled it just fine. All right, so let me show you what the eye relief on this looks like. So you can see where the stock position is. That's where I normally keep it. As you pull up on target, and you can see right about here, nose to charging handle is where I get the full field of view. Which most of the time if you're using a magnifier, you're probably going to be prone or benched or something like that. But you're going to have some sort of extra support. So my face would probably be closer. As I move farther away, still usable. Right about here is where, so whatever this distance is, about that much, which that's probably 3 to 4 inches, somewhere in there, it's still usable. Perfect though, again, is about nose to charging handle. Now you can fix that by either one, having a smaller rear sight, because this M-bus is just absolutely massive. Most optics allow you to put this, or not optics, but most rear sights allow you to move this optic probably another at least 1 or 2 rail slots back, which will give you about another inch. So just know that. Or you could get rid of the rear sight altogether and put this thing all the way back. Put your front or your rear sight over here like I have on my other rifle, and then everything can just be moved farther back. And so you can see a size comparison. That's the size comparison right there. They're about lined up right about there. So you can see how much farther the Holosun goes. And you can also see the rear sights, how much further back something smaller like this is versus that massive monstrosity. You could move it back another pick rail slot or 2. All right, and to give you a little bit of field of view comparison, there's my shed out at, oh, it's probably about 30, 35 yards, something like that. That's your field of view looking through the Holosun. Now let me show you what it looks like looking through the KTactical.
Alright, it's pretty hard to show you this through my iPhone lens, but that gives you a pretty good idea of the field of view. This is through the KTactical, and it also gives you a view of the clarity. The clarity on this thing is superb. I don't have a problem with it. I'd say it's on par with the Holosun and all the other magnifiers I've ever used. I don't have an issue with it. So with this being a newer company, if you have any suggestions, that I'm sure they'll watch this video, but if you have any suggestions that you would like them to implement, or any ideas or changes, things like that, put it down in the comments below. I'm sure they listen, be willing, because they seem very receptive whenever I was talking to them. So if you have any suggestions, something they can do differently, or if you have any suggestions for me for future videos or anything like that, go ahead and put them down in the comments below. Give us a like, a subscribe if you like this kind of content. And again, if you haven't bought one of these already and you're looking for a micro-sized magnifier, this is the one I'd get. For the money, can't beat it. Now, if you just want to spend tons of money, you know, sure, get something else. But personally, I don't see a reason to get anything more expensive than this because of all the features that I mentioned. And I might be beating a dead horse here and talking about how great this thing is, but I was very, very, very surprised that this thing did as well as it did. But anyways, hopefully y'all enjoy this kind of content. Have a good one.